he's going to compliment you the entire time. He might be a little fresh.
The keystone in the arch of Star Wars.
But, you know, I'm not going to say no to George Lucas.
Right. Sorry, I'm getting like emotional.
And you got this hulking, scary dude with the big nose and the perfect hair.
I understand. This is a safe space. This is a safe space between you and I and all of your viewers.
Cassie and Jim on the beach, and people are like, no. I can literally hear people out there, no.
Rogue One was awesome. I love the Han Solo movie, and then, of course, I love The Mandalorian.
And like getting to talk to fans face to face and learn their names and just, you know, get to hear their stories.
And in the world of Star Wars, there's a bunch of people who look different, and are different species. There's lizard men, there's psychic baby swamp monsters.
I joke that the best thing about writing Princess Leia is everybody knows who she is, and the worst thing about writing Princess Leia is everyone knows who she is.
And also you get Ewoks, and I am definitely a lover of Ewoks.
You're listening to Around the Galaxy.
Yes, it's a good thing. It's a great thing.
Well, welcome to Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show. I am your host, Pete Fletzer. How you doing? I hope you're having a good evening. If you're new to the show, thank you so much for checking us out. And if you're a Blue Bantha Milk Company patron that's hanging out with us for the first time, welcome. It's so exciting to meet you. I've been a big fan of Blue Bantha Milk for quite a while. And so it's nice to meet you. And to my Around the Galaxy patrons who are joining us this evening, thank you so much for hanging out as you have week to week. I really appreciate it. Make sure to show us your comments and your questions in the comment section. We're going to try to bring those up tonight. I am really excited to be introducing a conversation with my friend Matt from Blue Bantha Milk Company. Matt and I literally have been trying to get together to do this I found the first text message. It was about 2 years ago. 2 years ago. We tried to get together, and just life got in the way, and schedules, and the fact that he's on the other side of the planet didn't help. But let me just let's just jump right in. Matt, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm well. How are you?
I'm great, man. I'm great. How's you got to tell me what happens tomorrow, because I know you're a day ahead of me, and I want to know, you know, if I should I wake up and watch Loki tomorrow morning? Is it worth doing?
Hasn't happened yet. I think it's dinner time our time.
Okay.
We'll be able to watch it, which is awesome. I think you all should be jealous of the time delays that work in our favor for that, because like. What time do you wake up to watch like the Clone Wars and Bad Batch and all that stuff?
Yeah, that stuff drops around 3 a.m. Eastern time, which is where I am. And so you get all of our West Coast. And that's one of the cool things in this Star Wars community that we've all become a part of. Like we've got friends on the West Coast, and we've got friends on the East Coast, and we've got friends all over the world. And those West Coasters, it's just staying up till midnight. Look, I would stay up till midnight to watch Bad Batch. I'm not staying up till 3 a.m. So I'm getting up a little bit early. But you get to just sort of, you know, you put dinner on, you put the television on, you get to enjoy it.
Yep. The worst thing, I guess, about it is, you know, like you start, and I say the worst thing, but there's really nothing all that bad about it. It's like, right. poor you. You've got to stay off Twitter, because of course there's people that are diehard and they've jumped on, and they haven't hesitated to start putting screenshots and all that sort of stuff on there already. And you know, I'll just be a bit chill about the whole thing. Like I'll go, oh yeah, cool. Like I'm in a group chat with Catherine Neen. Hey, Catherine. You know, I'm in a group chat with Catherine Neen and Star Wars Spelt Out and Star Wars 101, and you know, like we're always and Turbo, and we're always sitting in there, and we have to say like who's seen it, who's watched it, whatever. And I'm right. Casual. I'll just be like, yeah, cool. I'll come in. I just won't look at the chat. But then I habitually open Twitter up and just go, and then I see a screenshot like.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally why I get up so early. Is not because like it's not because I want to watch it at 5 a.m. It's because I know that I will literally forget that it happened that morning, and I'll go on Twitter and people have no chill, and you know, immediately they're like
zero chill.
Yeah, they're like, oh my god, it was this character, and you're like, oh well, thank you. I don't. So yeah, you're right. It is a bit difficult, but hey, it is interesting though that there is there is almost sort of this unwritten spoiler Monday rule, which I wish more people stuck to, but at least
yeah. The problem is it's an unwritten rule.
Oh, it's unwritten and
it's unwritten.
Right. And everybody, it's still funny. I mean, I've been in the digital world since, back in the dial-up days, and it's that whole first mentality is still very, very strong. So
yeah.
That's hard to get.
God, it's annoying. Anyway.
So, but Matt, tell us, for those who may not know Blue Bantha Milk Company, or tell us a little bit about you and about the podcast.
Okay. Geez. All right. So me, I'm Matt. I'm a lifelong Star Wars nerd. I think, as we all are. Very stock standard kind of way of getting into it. It was like, hey, you're a kid, says Dad. Here's these tapes that I taped off television. Here, watch these. Sit, watch these. And I'm just like, what is this? Like wore the tape out. I mean, you would have heard this story a million times, because I think I know you're a couple of years older than me. Like I'm about to push 40. So in our age group, it's that standard VHS story. Wore the tapes out, knew where all the commercials were, got into it really because of the toys. I think that's sort of where my age bracket sort of falls away a bit. So all of the original trilogy was in the cinema. By the time I was 1, it had been and gone. So now you know my birth year if you're good at mathematics, and you can stalk me a bit easier. And then it was toys. It was just toys, like coming out of that period where the toys stopped being cool, like in the mid 80s. Mum would go to garage sales, pick up just buckets of figures, because someone's mother or father went, yeah, you're too old to be playing with toys, little Jimmy. And, he would put them up and stick them in a garage sale. And then Mum would swoop in and be like, oh, yeah, that's $5. Yep, cool. I'll take all that. And, so I got all these buckets of figures, out of boxes and all that stuff. But, with the coins and all that, parents always, for like birthdays, Christmas and stuff like that, I'd get like the play sets or something bigger, some sort of or a vehicle or something like that. So, Shuttle Tidarium's my favorite vehicle that I've got. Still got it. Ewok Village, still got it somewhere. Though I think when I was a kid, I was a real idiot and I put super glue on it and maybe glued one of those Ewok spin-off baddie figures of the green guys. What were they?
Oh, what were they called? Yeah.
I think I decapitated one of them and stuck his head to his hand and then painted blood on the thing, and then may have accidentally rested him on the Ewok Village playset, and I think he stuck to it.
Well, we know the Ewoks are murder bears, so if they could get one of their heads, they would definitely put it up on the wall. So I don't think we were that far off. So
so that's me in a nutshell. That's me in a nutshell. Lived life doing the whole Star Wars thing when it wasn't cool, and played the video games, all that stuff. Didn't really attach with the franchise for a few years in a strong way. I think just life got in the way, and I was the prequels happened, and I was of the internet generation that was on message boards and stuff. And I'll admit I was a shit. Like I wasn't bad, but I did the thing, like you're in your early 20s and like very impressionable, and then your peers are all saying this is terrible, and you go, oh, it must be terrible,
right?
And, it's what happens on the internet still today. And so anyway, I went off Star Wars for a bit, but it was kind of one of those like little hidden things. You didn't talk about it. You didn't talk about this secret little desire that you had inside you. So fast forward a bit, Disney buy happens, sequel trilogy begins, everything just starts kicking into gear, wakes everything up. There's been an awakening. I felt it. Then, I think it was around Rogue One. I was getting sick of feeling it by myself. So I went and started a Facebook group. And the whole idea was I wanted a Facebook group for people in Melbourne that could, you know, be nerds together, basically, that weren't cosplayers. And that was the kicker, because there were tons of cosplay groups already, but not just casual Melbourne geek Star Wars fan groups, not on Facebook. So started one, got a few hundred people into it. Had a couple of social events, and at the same time, you know, I'd been watching YouTube, Star Wars Explained, and at the time, a few other pods and YouTube channels and stuff that I since won't touch, you know, with a 10-foot pole, because they've just gone to the dark side. But they were still kind of influential in that sense. I was like, oh wait, you can get on the internet and talk about things, not just faff about. You know, like you can talk about serious things. And then the video essayists, you know, started being influential, and yeah, decided to start a YouTube channel. Started as a video essay channel, because that's what you do, obviously. And obviously we've morphed since then. Sometime in between that, Sean jumped in. He was in the group, and he was really active in the Facebook group. And yeah, we got along really well. And yeah, I was like, come aboard. And so we did. And yeah, we always thought that we'd be eventually working up to writing stuff together that was not necessarily video essays, but fiction. And in a roundabout way, that's kind of happened now.
Yeah, yes, it has. You have evolved into the creation of the AI written scripts of both episode 10 and Solo 2, and you have some Lando stories. For people who aren't familiar with, first of all, it was a privilege and an honor, and people who listen to me may have heard me talk about it, or hopefully may have even gone and seen it, where I got to be a part of your Solo 2 script. But basically, you have artificial intelligence write scripts which become they are done in such a way that they are absurdist and hilarious and very funny. But tell us a little bit about the AI scripts that Blue Bantha Milk Company has been working on.
Before I do, because obviously this is the video, and this portion of this conversation is for your patrons. So if you're a Around the Galaxy patron and you haven't watched Pete Fletzer as Jabba the Hutt in our Solo 2 story, what are you doing? Like, seriously, what are you doing with your life? Because that is something that should be like, hey, have you seen me on a green screen pretending to be Jabba the Hutt? If not, I don't know. Maybe you should question your patronage.
Maybe I should push that a little harder. Yeah, I did. I went all in. I used green screen, and but hey, I do have to say, I mean, Matt, you sent along some of the props to be used, and so it was a whole thing. But
yeah. So if you haven't seen Pete do that yet, then do, because it will change your life.
I will put a link in the description, so you have no excuse to not be able to find it, although it's not difficult to find either.
no, it may ruin your relationships with others. That's true. Let's just say that, because once you see Pete, you never go back. I can't rhyme that anyway. So we kind of got in a bit of a rut with content, as you do. I mean, you know, we've had conversations about this where you create and you make stuff and you put it out onto the web, and you're fighting against an algorithm constantly, and you just don't feel as though you're doing your best work, right? You don't feel like it's really hitting home. And I thought we were doing some good stuff, but you know, it just wasn't hitting the spot, and that's, I think, a combination of a lot of things. Some of it is you know, like audience retention and stuff like that. It's like, you know, and I'd been feeling for a while that, you know, the whole video essay thing is kind of a done deal. Like, there's the people that do it and the people that are known for doing it, and cracking into that is really hard,
right? Like,
unless you're I mean, look, I think we're good, but I don't think that, you know, we were fantastic at that. We hadn't quite hit the stride yet. We were getting there.
Right.
But even still, we're just Star Wars, and that's kind of niche. Star Wars people on YouTube, for the most part, want lore. They want lore explanations.
Right.
Like that's something we found quite a bit from feedback. Like we just always get these comments, particularly early on. It's like, your channel would be so much better if you just focused on the canon and the lore and what happened. I was like, there's 12 channels that do that. But
at least 12 channels.
At least 12.
Yeah.
And they would do it a lot better because I'm not a great reader. Like it takes me months to read a book, Right. So unless you want to watch me just read Wikipedia. So anyway, I've been seeing stuff pop up on YouTube about artificial intelligence, and people had been playing with this concept, and I was in the car and I was like, oh, what if we did that, but we used it to write Star Wars stories and perform them and all this stuff. And so I ran it by Sean. He's like, yep, we're doing it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. So I learned how to use this AI. I learned how to use this AI generation tool called InfoKit, which is a bit of a learning curve. But yeah, basically, you teach it what you want it to write about, and the setting and the characters, and that's the big part is the setting. So we're like, all right, it's got to be episode 10, so it's got to have the context of all 9 films. So we made this one Google Doc with screenplays for all 9. And it's a big doc. Like you try opening it and it would just take forever to load. And then you loaded
in all 9 scripts.
All 9.
Okay.
So it's like select all, copy, go into InfoKit, paste, wait a minute. And then it goes bump in. And then it's like, what do you do? And so from there, you have to tell it where to pick up the story. Because if you just hit go, and we tried it, you hit go and it will pick up from Rey on Tatooine. Okay. And the joke I always have is like, even a really dumb AI knows that she doesn't live there forever, because no matter how many times we try it, she'd have a quick conversation with the woman and the camel, the woman with the space camel. She'd have a little more conversation with her, and then she'd jet off somewhere every time. So anyway, let's not rant about that too much. So you have to write a thing. So it's like, opening crawl, however many years later, where are you going to pick up the story? And then you hit go. And then from there, you start building scenes out. You start getting new characters, old characters, and you start getting, I guess, it starts fleshing out a scene for you, mainly with dialogue. It doesn't give you much exposition. And then you just repeat the process. So you selectively take bits, feed it back, write new scenes, and say, okay, now we're going to go here and we're going to use these characters and this is happening. And you, like us, Sean and I, we start piecing together what the story is based on a big block of gibberish. Selectively piece it together, find the bits that are funny, that make sense, and then feed it back, go again, and do that over the space of a month. Basically.
So it's kind of an iterative process you do have to do. And you were saying that you also have to do some editing. You have to make it read better. You have to do some things.
A heap. Yeah. A heap. God, something I thought if we had the time for it, if you want, I could do a test and I could read some to you. Like you tell me a setting, or someone in the chat write a 1-sentence setting, and I'll feed it in from the comment into the AI, and I'll tell you what it spits out, and you'll get a bit of an idea.
All right. So somebody in the chat, write us a 1-sentence setting for a Star Wars setting, and Matt will.
And include 2 characters.
Okay.
Just say name 2 Star Wars characters, preferably big ones, because it will illustrate the way that it works a bit better.
Awesome.
So yes, we do have to edit the hell out of it, because it's not the kind of stuff that you can just put down on paper, read it, and expect that anyone's going to be able to follow along, or that the story's going to go anywhere. Like I don't know, Pete, have you ever looked at any other stuff like that's on YouTube that's AI written? Because there's a little bit of it.
There is some of it, and it is very, it leaves giant gaps or makes really weird assumptions, which is, I guess, part of the reason why AI is where it is still. I mean, it's good for numbers, it's good for trends, but it's very hard from it. In fact, interestingly, I was reading, because things, I mean, even as far as lawyers and things like that, there are AI programs which are just as effective because, for legal purposes, for example, you're going to call on a particular existing judgment and things. And so it can work there. But they have said that the only place where AI can't replace humans is in the in anything that's creative or artistic, right? So because there is so much, it has a lot to do also with perception of what good is. And actually just today on Twitter I was having a conversation with somebody about the word objectively. When people say that movie is objectively bad, well, you can't really do that for anything that's art, because what I may like a particular style which is dramatically different than you, Matt, and if that's the case, you're going to dislike it, and I'm going to say objectively based on what I like, it's not going to work. So
correct.
Yeah, so it is interesting that AI can't quite get there. All right, so Matthew, one of my patrons, wrote in to us that Luke and Grogu Jedi training on Tatooine, and we're going to feed that into the AI and see what it comes back with.
All right, so I'm going to flesh that out just a little bit, and I'm going to say specifically Luke Skywalker into the AI, just so that it knows without a doubt who it is. Because one thing I have noticed is it knows. Like, you can feed it a scene with, let's say, Anakin and Padme, and it will start bringing in other characters from Star Wars because it knows what Star Wars is.
Okay,
how it knows is anyone's guess. Sure, it's documented somewhere. But anyway, so I'm going to flesh it out to Luke Skywalker and Grogu arrive at Luke's new Jedi training temple on Tatooine. And then I might say Luke looks to Grogu and that's it. So I'm going to just hit generate. All right. And says, so Luke looks to Grogu and says, I guess this means the end of your fighting. Grogu then breaks down in tears and tells Luke how he killed his best friend. And yet I still live on, and so does Koran. As Luke watches his old friend in grief, Han Solo approaches the room with Chewbacca. Han is breathing heavily and says, well, that's just great. Grogu and Koran hug again, even though we thought he was dead.
Yeah, he's dead.
And Grogu gives Luke some comforting words, which causes Luke to break down and cry in Koran's arms. Koran comments on how a middle-aged man is the one who taught him the true, hit generate again, meaning of courage. Meanwhile, Nien Nub and Wicket E. Reckless have arrived at Nar Shaddaa. Nien tells Wicket about the Force and how Nien is supposed to be a Jedi. When Wicket points out how a middle-aged man is the one who told him about the Force, Nien asks Wicket if he had the same opinion when he was young. Wicket agrees with Nien, and he says that there are 3 rules to the Jedi Order: never lie, never fight, and never start things.
Never start things.
Wicket then asks Nien if he knows the last part, and Nien tells him that it states that, now I'm just going to make it a real short generation here, states that the Jedi do not start things. There you go.
There you go. So it's interesting because you can definitely, as Star Wars nerds like us, we can, there's characters in there that we know, there's different pieces of them, and but it builds a very bizarre little story. And again, that's what your episode 10 was, and your Solo 2 was. It created these bizarre, like I said, it's almost like, I mean, I'm a huge fan of British humor, like Monty Python and something. So it's just a bit absurd. It's just on the edge of making any real sense, but close enough to making sense that you can follow it and see the joke in it. And that's the thing with it. And they were hugely successful for you. How many you got quite a few impressions and views for these, and you got pickup in some websites on articles as well, right?
Yeah, so AV Club picked up the story, and episode 10's around like 40,000 views cumulatively, or more than that now, between episodes 1 and 2. So yeah, it was really eye-opening. And for us, considering we'd sort of been having some doubts about kind of like what to do next and how to kind of approach it and all of that sort of stuff, it kind of gave us a bit of a kick in the butt to say, you know what, like, let's just have fun with this. Like, let's stop trying to push things to a schedule, and let's stop trying to, like, you know, because we were trying to get something out every 2 weeks. You know, let's stop trying to do that. Let's stop doing stuff that, you know, we feel like is kind of paint by numbers, you know, for the sake of views, and then, you know, like worrying about the stuff that we really have our hearts sort of set on. Because that was kind of it. You know, we would always try to say, okay, well, we think this will get some views because it's kind of current, and then we'll do an essay here about something that we're passionate about. And like, we just thought, no, hold on, this is a lot of fun. Like, this is a lot of fun. We get to have people that we like and enjoy speaking to come in and join in on this with us as well. Like, we get other creators that we interact with and get them in on it and give them something fun to do as well. Because, like, reporting on the news is, you know, for the pods and the channels that do Star Wars news, that is a full-time gig. You get no rest from that. It's like, cool. In your rest time, just come and have some fun. You don't have to talk news. You can just be silly, put on a costume and embarrass yourself in front of everyone. And, you know, that for us, and like creating some sort of sense of community around these creations, felt more important and more kind of like what I mentioned at the very start of this conversation, like starting that Facebook group because wanting to get people together. That it feels right. It feels like it sort of has come full circle in a way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you bring up a really interesting thing. And so when I look back at why I started this podcast, I mean, I started it, I mean, literally my objective was I was listening to Star Wars podcasts and I wanted to talk to other podcasters, and I started to get to know, you know, I mean, I've been very lucky. I've had all kinds of different guests, and this show has become sort of a conversation between two people sort of getting to know each other and understand what that Star Wars connection is. But to your point, it has to be fun. And there's, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the sort of bizarre world that we live in as Star Wars content creators.
Yeah.
I think, you know, it's interesting because we have, there's sort of the echo chamber on Twitter or Facebook or whichever social media platforms you hang out on. And it's the same several thousand people, right? And if you were to do a Venn diagram of people who follow Blue Bantha Milk versus people who follow Around the Galaxy, there's probably a fairly healthy cross section, but a surprisingly smallish one, right? I mean, because obviously you have you're in a different geographical location, blah, blah, blah. But that being said, there's a, you know, there's no way to say this without sounding like a jerk, so I'm going to take that chance because, man, that's the kind of guy I am. Every time every time I open up Twitter, there's another podcast or another YouTube channel or another piece of content creation, which I'm so happy to see because that means that the Star Wars community is alive and well and excited. But at the same time, to the point you were making, and maybe not making this point directly, but referring to is, how do you, like, I don't want to say compete, because honestly, this isn't the it's not a competitive job for me, right? But you are competing for eyeballs, and you do create content. I create Around the Galaxy and try to make it the best quality product I can so that people can hear it. But if I'm competing with so many different things, like you said, I know Around the Galaxy should never be a news program. It will never be a news program. That's not what I want to do. I like these kind of interviews. You wanted to create from the start. And gosh, people have to check out Blue Bantha Milk's YouTube channel, because you have some hilarious videos. You come from it, you know, at a very sort of a fun approach to Star Wars. But let's talk about that. Like, do you ever feel like, geez, there's too much content creators, or do you feel like we happen to see that side of the world because we are content creators, so it appears that there's more content creators than there really are?
I don't think that there's too much. I think that it's more the latter. Like, there's always going to be just volumes of this kind of content now, because all the tools are there, everyone's got them, and anyone can do it. And you know, it gets easier and easier with every OS update and all that sort of stuff, with every bit of software, with every browser update, something gets easier.
Yep.
So that's never going to go away or change. But I think we are a little more attuned to it because, you know, we think about when you started the channel. Like, I think this experience would be kind of similar. You get on the social media platforms, you start looking at who gets followed in those spaces, you know, like, and you start following, and inevitably you find that, okay, well, people are gravitating around this person that creates this content. And then from there you find other people, and there's people doing the same thing as what you just did, which is, you know, trying to find other similar people, but finding the tweets with the most likes. And there's usually a lot of creators in there. Algorithms then just keep it cyclical and cycling that around. And, you know, the same thing happens with YouTube. You know, you're starting out, you go to YouTube, you create your channel, you look for other channels, you add them to your like channels list, and then you look at them and say, oh, well, where else are they on social media? Because you want to, I think you create channels and podcasts and stuff like that because you want some sort of community, right? You know, you like this niche little thing, you like something that, you know, you're not exactly, in some cases, going to go out every single day and make your job or career or anything like that, but you want to have some sort of deeper connection to it than just consumption, right? That's not for everyone, but for the people that it is for, that want to create something, I really believe there's a community driven desire there. So you then naturally are going to want the support of others that are doing similar things in your community, you know, and I think that just puts you in that kind of mindset. And I think that puts you, makes you more receptive to seeing similar people. And depending on what your take is on, like, and when I say you, I mean that generally to any creator, like, what is your personal take on competitiveness in the creation space? Because I think that really alters the way that you see things and the way that you sort of interact with other creators and how you feel about that. I don't feel competitive with any of that stuff, you know, like I prefer the idea of linking together with others, promoting everyone else, giving and people that don't have as big a platform, help them get a bigger platform. You know, like, we've been helped a lot when, you know, we didn't need to be helped. We didn't deserve it necessarily. We had done nothing to make anyone want to go out of their way, I believe. You know, maybe I'm being modest. I don't know. But we were just being us. And, you know, bigger channels, like, for example, Star Wars Explained. They supported us early on when we had 200 or 300 followers, and that was it. You know, they supported us. They helped get us up past 1,000. They're, you know, just by them tweeting about something or saying one nice thing on their platform helped get us a little bit further. And then we were like, oh, well, hold on a second. Like, we've got to pay that forward a little bit as well. So, you know, people that we've sort of then ended up gravitating around, it's like, okay, well, now let us try to help get you past 1,000, you know? So, like, we try to do that sort of stuff all the time. And I think that's always going to put you in a position where you are seeing new creators come up all the time, but you also see the ones that are coming up and stirring the pot and doing stuff that you think, oh God, this doesn't help anyone. This doesn't help the community. And that's tough. I think that's harder for me than worrying about our own content and whether people are going to watch it. It's that you have to interact in social media spaces, and inevitably there are creators out there that are not great with community. They treat it like a competition, and it shows. It really shows.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make, because you're right. There is And maybe it's also gosh, you just said earlier that you're on the brink of 40 and I'm on 50, but I look at my kids who are 8 and 11 years old, right? And they have a dream of being a YouTube star, right? That's they're like, so I can understand that there are people who are taking this a bit more seriously and a bit more like this is going to be their job. And I mean, the reality is, and so I had a great conversation with a friend of mine who's he's a digital media professional out on the West Coast in LA, and he's involved in all these things that are just really interesting that I couldn't get involved in. But he made a great point. He said, the chances of becoming a YouTube success story. Yeah, you can make a couple $100, couple $1,000 a month on YouTube, but the YouTube success stories are the same as people who make it in the music industry. It's the same people who make it in acting. It's the same people who make it in the sports, in professional sports. It's such a long shot now because so many people. It's so competitive. And to that end, and I think, and this is why I loved hearing what you were saying at the top, is it's so important to be doing this for the reasons that you were saying, because you're trying to have some fun with it. You're trying to enjoy it and expand that community. I mean, I don't have the largest Twitter following, but at almost 4,000 followers, those are 4,000 people that I get to interact with and have conversations with about my favorite thing to talk about when I'm not dealing with the real world, right? So that alone makes it worthwhile. And once it becomes incredibly precious to people, those are, to your point, those are the people that I don't want to interact with. People who and this isn't the right time or place to share examples, but there's people who I think people would be surprised are really very overprotective of their quote unquote social media brand or their podcast brand. And it's weird. I mean, and it's weird to me because look, I'm with you, and I love that perspective because to your point, I think 9th show I had Anthony Bresnikin on the show because he was one of those guys that was like, I'm up here. I'm at the time he was Entertainment Weekly, but he wanted to help people who had an interesting story to tell get there. Star Wars Explained was super cool to me from the get-go. And I've told them twice on the 2 times they were on my show. It's like, you were the guys that I was like listening to and following before I even considered doing this. And they're just they're great people. And the great ones need to be recognized, I think.
Absolutely. There's Matthew in the comments made a point, that a bunch of creators only use Star Wars as a cash grab. I want to add to that because, Pete, you are correct. It is not that easy by a statistical kind of chance of becoming like a YouTube hit, right? It's pretty hard, even for the ones that, like, I'm going to say on our side. Like, so we always talk about, like, there's sides in Star Wars fandom. And there's the people that are, like, just having fun with it and all that. And then you've got that other side. Right. And there's always, I think, a conversation that, comes up about that other side, using the algorithm to stir up drama and all this sort of stuff. I don't know if you've ever looked into people trying to crack into that space. Yep. Like doing the same sort of thing, like starting up a channel and all that sort of stuff, but going, this being angry online really works and all that sort of stuff. They're having the same problems as us.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Like I've looked into it. Like we've done this. There are a lot of channels struggling to get views that are weaponizing hate and all that sort of stuff, as much as the people that aren't. It's a crazy thing. All of these algorithms are designed around feeding people the stuff that they already like. Right. Yep. So once something is big, it tends to stay big unless that person just stops.
Yep. Well, it's interesting because I have always said, because I've been in digital communications in one form or another for the last 20 years. And I've always said the most disappointing thing about the quote unquote information age, and if I want to just sound like the old guy that I am, but the disappointing piece has been that, I had always hoped that the internet would allow people to listen to both sides, right? Like, for example, when I see these crazy I no longer do it, but before, I mean, I look at it like somebody like my dad, who contacted me after Doomcock had his story saying that they were going to redo the sequels, right? This was back in November or whatever. And he was quoted in freaking Forbes magazine, right?
Ridiculous. Yeah.
My father texted me and said, "Hey, I see they're redoing the sequels. What do you think of that?" I was like, "Dad, let me just explain to you what's going on in this bizarre Star Wars, social media space." But it's, where was I going with this? It was there's this you do work the algorithm, and it's interesting because it's interesting to hear you say that, because I have not done the research, but I can safely say that when I think of that negative side, that clickbait side of fandom, there's like about 12 sites that I think of. There's 12 creators that I think of, but to that point, you're right. There's probably thousands of them trying to sort of get on the backs of the Kathleen Kennedy's being fired, Gina Carano was fired stories, and you're right. That's probably just that's just as hard. And to the point that I was making before, I'd always hoped that even when I see crazy political stories, and certainly won't go into that here, but when I look at one view or another, if it seems plausible yet crazy, I take that 5 minutes to go and do the research. The problem is, if I want to believe that Kathleen Kennedy is ruining Star Wars, if I've bought into whatever that mindset is, instead of going and saying, well, let somebody just told me that she's the #1 grossing female film producer of all time, let me look into what that means. Instead, they find 5 more 6-minute videos that explain how she's being fired, what she's doing from a social justice warrior perspective, and ruining Disney and blah, blah, blah. So it's interesting that algorithm is working against the system. And in a way, you can almost, I've seen this stated in different ways. And you and I talked a little bit about it before we got on here, that, YouTube, for example, changes the goalpost. They move what pays and what doesn't on a regular basis. YouTube needs to take some responsibility, or I'd love, I'll give you my opinion. I'd love to hear yours. YouTube needs to take some responsibility for continuing to make it profitable to be ugly and to take on some of the, I mean, honestly, these are really, in some cases, extremely dangerous points of view, putting things into people's minds and feeding negativity. YouTube needs to take some responsibility for that.
Yeah, I agree. But how, where do you draw that line? There's so much gray area in it, and the quote unquote clever people on that side of YouTube creation and all that sort of stuff, they know where that line is, and they know what they can and can't push. It makes it very hard to enforce that sort of stuff. But I mean, God, in a utopian world, yes, I absolutely think YouTube and Facebook in particular need to be held accountable for what they've allowed to propagate, for what they've allowed to fester, in a sense, because there was such a period of time there where it went unchecked.
Right.
And that's the problem. Like, when you create any kind of community, you can set all the terms and conditions and all the community standards and all of that sort of stuff, but that is worth nothing. That paper is worth not the value of what it's printed on if you don't enforce it. And they went for so long without enforcing it. They offshore it, and like, without getting too political on this sort of stuff, like, when you have a platform like Facebook offshoring their moderation to countries that maybe don't even speak English as a first language, right? And look, I'm going to be very careful with how I say this, but like, if you do that and just give them a guidebook, as we've seen, like, I mean, there's been leaks of this, they just give people guidebooks, you're going to get incredibly literal interpretations of things, because you don't have someone there looking for different context, and you're not even arming the people in those centers to, at least this was how it was, you're not arming them with the tools to be able to look further. It's here's the tweet.
Right.
And that is it. That's all that they can sort of look at. And the problem is like, for the people on the other end of that moderation, you're seeing the context, you're seeing the conversation that happens before and after, you're seeing the news post and all that. But you get one person that, let's say, has made content and pushed a really harmful idea, but has just treaded the line of not falling outside of the guidelines. And then you get one person that reacts to that. That person is the one that gets punished.
Right.
Because they go, "You effing jerk," or something like that.
Yep.
Meanwhile, this person has said something really harmful and horrible. But, you know, they offshore this stuff. They give this stuff to people that are having to be inundated with it. And they did that because they were giving it to people, you know, inside their own company. And the content that they were having to review was just like, it was putting people into therapy.
Right.
And so you have Facebook and YouTube just to say, "Oh, well, you know what? Let's not do that to our employees. Let's contract a business and let's do it cheaply." And that's horrible. They need to be held accountable for that, because they also are then doing that to people in other companies. Like they're exposing people to this and not arming them well enough. They're really not arming them well enough. And I feel for the people that have to do that so much. Like, I would hate to have to be a content moderator. That would be one of the worst jobs.
Yeah.
One of the absolute worst jobs. But you've got these companies that have created a Goliath, each independently, that is so far beyond, I guess, a point of easy return.
Yeah. It's almost impossible to kind of pull it back at this point. And that's where the challenge is, I think, right? The monster is so big, it becomes a bit of a challenge. Andrew, one of our patrons, asked if he sees, or if we see some of these channels or creators disappearing as YouTube and social media continue to saturate. I'll start with a quick sort of, you know, one of the things as I got into this 2 years ago. So Around the Galaxy is about 2 years and a couple months old. And at one point, I looked at it, just as I was saying before, geez, there's so many content creators to like, how do I compete and do I compete and what, and that also helped me get, again, that mindset of this is not a competition. This is creating something I love to do. But the mindset was that eventually this will dissipate. Fewer people will engage in content creation. But I haven't seen us reach that saturation point. What's your thoughts on it?
I see it a little bit already. I mean, I don't think that it's ever going to be that everyone just drops out unless something happens. Like, let's say what we were just talking about happens and these companies get held responsible and all of a sudden the platforms have to get changed to a point that they are fundamentally different. I mean, that can happen in a number of ways. Like, it happens with taxation.
Right.
You know, like simple things like that. Like, there's reciprocal tax laws between Australia and the United States, but the United States still wants a cut, even though I'm here. I'm using an American platform. So I'm like, any income that we make from YouTube, we're paying Australian income tax on after America takes a cut, which doesn't seem fair to me, but it's a small cut, but still it's an additional 5% up to like, changes like that can happen all the time. So it's either going to come as making platforms more accountable in a way that fundamentally changes it and makes it less attractive to do. There could be taxation. There could be all sorts of other things that happen behind the scenes at a less tangible level that make creators back out. But then you'll have other people that will step right in. I mean, you see it with things like YouTube, right? I mean, not YouTube, Uber. So Uber launched, they paid the drivers better. They did all these things that were better than becoming a standard taxi driver. And then once they had the hold, they tightened their grip. They stopped paying so well. They stopped doing things by the book. And and drivers that came in that first wave went, "Whoa, this is not what I signed up for. This sucks. I'm going to find a better job." And they ditched out, you know, like they jump out. But then you'll always find someone that's willing to accept the new terms. That's just the nature of the beast. And these companies know that.
Yeah.
So you'll see that cycle happen all the time. You see it a bit because obviously there's always going to be creators that, I guess, they believe the hype, they believe the marketing that YouTube puts out and all this. It's like, you know, generate an income and all this sort of stuff. And you know, I hate to hate to say it, but like the US isn't exactly known for having a great minimum wage, right?
Right.
So it's I feel like it's a really attractive thing to be like, I can take control just like an Uber driver. I can take control. I can work as much as I want. I can grind and make some money. And there's always going to be people that do that and don't get the results they want and step out and go, I've been doing this for 6 whole months and no one's, no one's watched and I'm going to leave. And that's just the reality of it. I see that a fair bit because, pods especially, like, people can make a podcast so easily and they do it. And if they're not getting any traction, all of a sudden they stop releasing episodes.
Right.
And then you'll see a tweet a few months later and it's going, I had to step away. It just wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. And it's like, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I also think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, that we've been in lockdown for a year and change. And I can honestly say that, some of the relationships built through the podcast and through social media have, sort of buoyed me through some of these incredibly stressful times. And, hey, I love my family. I love my kids. But if I couldn't talk about Star Wars with people on a regular basis, that would be an odd thing.
He says as they listen at the side door.
Right, they're like, hey, wait, he didn't say kind of love my kids this time. That's good. It's a step up from last time. But so yeah, to your point too. I mean, and you said it earlier. Anybody with an iPad and internet access can create content. Yeah, and so it's my belief that a lot of the content, once the world starts to reopen, which who knows exactly when that's going to be, will start to dissipate because people won't have the hours and hours of extra time. But again, I think, and this is why I love doing the show, because I always get a slightly different perspective and I look at things a little bit differently. And I think, once we it's just that it's become so easy to do, and it's become something that it's an outlet for a lot of people, and right now it's a way to maintain that communication and maintain that connection, and in a couple months, who knows where it'll be.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would like to think that we'll get out of this a lot sooner than not, but also, that whatever the relationships are that people have fostered during this time, it's like, keep them.
Yes.
Keep them. Just because it's not someone that you can go out to the pub with, easily.
Right.
And have a drink with, don't treat it any less. Don't treat that relationship as less, because, at some point, you'll maybe go to a convention or something like that. And I can tell you, like, when you meet those people that you've had these really great experiences with, and then you go and meet them somewhere like that, it's bloody amazing. Like, you're like, oh, wow, like, it didn't matter. The distance didn't matter. Here's my long time old friend, that I've never seen before, or whatever it may be. Like, just foster that stuff. Don't just go, oh yeah, business as usual, and all right, cool, I've got my friends from high school.
I think that's an important point. I think Catherine, who is one of your patrons, Catherine Dean, said that her Star Wars family got her through the lockdown, and I think that's really important. I mean, I say it, and it's interesting. Scotty J. Rowe from Bombad Cast and I have, he's literally half my age, and I joke around. I'm like, he's like the son I never knew I had, but we've become really good friends, and I cannot wait to meet him and spend time and actually hang. And those relationships, the relationships that have been built, are just as real as anything that would have happened in the quote unquote real world. In fact, I guess you could almost look at it as it's been an opportunity to expand, right? Where into areas that you care about. Because I mean, I've got a ton of Star Wars friends, but I've also made friends in other areas that interest me. I've met people through music. I'm a wannabe musician as well, and so I've met some people there who hopefully one day maybe I'll get to play with them, or I'll get to see them play, or something like that. And those things are incredibly important. So
Yeah, you gonna go to Celebration?
I will be at Celebration, and you guys are not, right? Australia, are you guys? What's the story with Australia and Celebration?
Okay, so the quick story is, on paper, the government said that they're not going to open international travel until after Celebration happens. So it would be a few months after. But since then, they've talked about reopening it for people that have been vaccinated, but they haven't committed to it yet, and all that sort of stuff. And it's just been, we're at the whim of the government. Basically, we don't know whether that's going to transpire or not. The other big scare that we had, obviously, is the date change, moved it to Memorial Day weekend, and once you add those prices for that weekend at hotels onto the exchange rate and the travel costs and all that, it was looking like, geez, like, I mean, Catherine, myself, Josh, Turbo, we were all sort of looking at an Airbnb, and the price doubled from the old dates to the new dates. Yeah, the price doubled, and it was gonna end up costing something like five grand or something like that for the time. That's a lot of money, right? But credit to Reed Pop and Disney and whatnot, because they got those deals with the official hotels. And it looks like for the most part those prices are kind of like locked in at an agreed rate. Because if anyone managed to get those, they were reasonable. They were at sort of just a normal-ish price for the time. Yeah. So it's chalk it up to a maybe. Maybe. I'd like to think. Catherine just said, she's fighting tooth and nail to get there, and it's like, I've got to de-stress myself and not think about it too much and just wait, because God, it could change at the drop of a hat. We all know it.
Yeah. Well, for me, I have never been to a Star Wars Celebration, believe it or not, which is strange to me. And I remember actually wanting to get to Denver for the very first one, because I was at a different point in my life, and of course I didn't do it. And then Chicago, I was actually traveling. I was in Europe for a job, and I couldn't get there for that. And I wish I could have made it. And this one's going to be special though, because I'm taking my 2 kids, and and my father is going to be coming with us, because my wife, who I bought a ticket for my wife, and at a certain point my wife was like, I don't think I can take 4 days of Star Wars. I was like, all right. But my dad, who got me into Star Wars, who got me into writing, who got me into all those things, he's going to join us. He's going to be 70 something. And
that's cool.
And it's so cool because I'll get to be with him. And more importantly is he'll get to be able to go through Star Wars Celebration with my kids. And so the memories for them will be amazing. And look, I'm not going to lie. I have a built-in babysitter for the after hours party. So I'm going to send my dad and the kids back to the hotel, and I'm going to be able to go out. So, but it works out. But I mean, honestly, to be able to go to Star Wars Celebration with my dad is something that I'm super excited about. So
yeah, mate, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry, you may have just noticed that my ring light just died.
Your lighting just changed. This is like evil Matt from Blue Bay.
Yeah. That battery died on it.
Yeah. So, hey, I do have my 10 question segment of the show.
Oh,
so if you're ready for those, let me throw those questions. So I'll throw them at you and we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
So the first question.
I haven't prepped.
You haven't prepped because I didn't send them to you.
No, you didn't. Do you normally? I was going to ask. Do you normally?
I'll tell you, the only people I send them to is Lucasfilm talent, who their agents or Lucasfilm says we have to see every question you're going to ask, and then I don't skip to the script anyway. But now they're listening and saying, that bastard, we told them that. So here we go. The first one though is hasn't changed in 118 episodes, whatever. What is your favorite Star Wars movie, TV show, or book?
The Last Jedi.
Yeah,
easily The Last Jedi. And it wasn't at the beginning. It took maybe 2 or 3 watches, because I think like a few people, you came out of that, and like, whoa, whoa, something. This was big. This is something happened here. But yeah, once I sort of got past that, I mean, God, I laid in bed that night after watching it. I didn't sleep the whole night. I just laid there staring at the ceiling. the next day I had to work and I felt stuffed. But then I went and watched it again the same day. I had back-to-back nights booked, and that second viewing, I went, oh, I just watched something kind of special.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, it's The Last Jedi.
It's interesting. I've said it on the show before, and I remember walking out of Last Jedi, and I said to my friend, I said that was both the best and worst Star Wars movie I ever saw, because it was there was so much. Like, part of me was like, oh man, they missed it, and then part of me was like, as you just said, what did I just see? I need to see that again. And I was very. I was right back into it, and yeah. Now, the interesting thing about Last Jedi, and I said this on a recent episode as well, is while it's one of my favorite Star Wars stories, it's not the movie that I go to watch as often. Yeah,
same. Yeah. What's yours?
Well, my favorite Star Wars movie is Empire. Just for all the generic reasons and the reason people say so.
Nearly 50. I've got white hair.
Yeah. I saw it in the theaters.
Have you seen Empire Strikes Back? It's the best movie of all time.
Best movie ever made. So what's your favorite non-Star Wars movie?
That changes.
Yeah.
That changes quite a bit. Obviously, because I will watch a lot of things. I would say it's probably Arrival.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that movie. I remember when I saw it for the first time, and kind of the ending happens, and the whole plot all of a sudden makes sense, like complete sense. I mean, it always made sense in this linear story, but like, I guess for anyone that hasn't seen it, I won't spoil it. But just when you get to the end and you realize what you'd just been seeing, and the how and the why events were happening, and how much of an emotional impact that has on the main characters, it moved me deeply, and it always does. Like, I've watched it a couple of times since, and I don't think I ever come out of that viewing, feeling any different about it. I'm always just kind of like, single time, like overjoyed, gutted at the same time, just like, so yeah, Arrival, easily.
That's amazing.
I'm gonna
have to watch it again. And you're right, yeah, it's kind of an unfair question, because it also depends on where you are, and that's funny. Like Star Wars, there's always a movie that you come back to, right? Yeah. Like for me, Empire, I will stop everything if it's. I mean, I'll watch Attack of the Clones and stop everything, but it doesn't change as often. But yeah, you're right. It's and I remember seeing Arrival. I've seen it just once, and now I'm gonna have to watch it again. I'm gonna put that on my weekend watch list. That's great. Cool. Name an actor who's not in a Star Wars movie that you'd like to see in a Star Wars movie, and what kind of character do you think they could play?
Oh God. This one's hard. This one's really hard, because, like, when you ask something like that, the first thing you go to is always like the actors that you know, but every single time I go, nah, they're too big. They're too well known. They're too, like, so I don't think I have one, because every person that I can think of, I go, no, they're too well known, and that's why I can think of them easily. I want the characters being played by someone that isn't so well known,
right?
And that's if I was going to have a gripe about some of the TV stuff, like all the cameos of people that you kind of know, and these getting actors in that we're all familiar with and stuff like that. So stop doing that. Stop doing that. As much as Timothy Oliphant is great to look at, I think objectively you can say that dude's a good looking guy. And how cool it was having him and what's his name, playing the barkeep.
The guy from
Deadwood.
Yeah, from Deadwood. Yeah.
Having that little reunion was really cool.
Yeah.
But let's just take it easy with cameos of people that we know. Like, just give people that need the shot or have like really great talent that are unheard of, like, give them the go, because immersion is better, and it can be a really powerful launching pad.
Yeah,
like it can be fraught with danger, obviously, but give it to people that we don't know, just let us enjoy new faces.
That's why I kind of hope that Daisy Ridley is open to more Star Wars and takes a lesson from Mark Hamill and others who've been in those kind of iconic roles and embrace it earlier, right? I mean, it took Mark Hamill years to embrace that. Okay, I'm not going to be able to go and do all these great things that I thought I would, but if I stick with the Star Wars stuff, I mean, just the fact that we're now seeing, leaked shots of Harrison Ford back as Indiana Jones, this recognition that that's who I am, cool. That's what made my career. I mean, that's what we love. And Orient Express was a nice attempt for Daisy, but it didn't work for me for whatever reason. And
those ensemble films don't always.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah. That's true. And I think you're right. I think that is one of the things that makes Star Wars great. And it's people who are, Oscar Isaacs was on his way up. He was in a couple things, but not everybody saw him. But he was at that perfect time to become Poe. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
God, he's good in Ex Machina.
Yeah.
That movie, that would be up the list as well. Like if anyone hasn't seen it, Ex Machina.
Yeah. So good. So yeah, but again, he was not everybody saw that, but everybody saw Star Wars, and that was his thing, right? So yeah. It's always interesting to me too, how some actors can break out of that. Harrison Ford was able to do it, but not everybody can. But anyway, all right. If you could own any critter from Star Wars as a pet, what would you want as a pet?
A critter as a pet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Probably a Loth wolf.
Loth wolf.
Yep, Loth wolf. The Loth cats. I've got cats. Obviously, some people in the stream heard one of the cats earlier because he is a jerk and he doesn't like closed doors. So, it's the door is closed. Meow, 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 meow. And then you open the door and he just looks at it and goes, "Oh yeah, good. What's on the other side remains on the other side. Good. I can go back to sleep." So yeah, I'd say a Loth wolf. They would be. I think they would be very good. I mean, obviously they would be dangerous as well, but sentient force dogs, cool, very cool.
They take a little bit of space. You could ride them. Yeah.
You can ride them places. You wouldn't need a car, and I mean that would lower your eco footprint. I mean, yeah, maybe they need to eat a lot. They probably need to eat a lot of other animals and stuff like that. I don't know what they eat. I'd really hate to pick up their poos though. They'd probably be huge. I live in an apartment, but hey, they're pretty sentient, so maybe you could teach them to unlock the door and take themselves down to the park and use the bin. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they can use the force and they can, I don't know, they can zap their craps to another dimension or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. Through the force, anything is possible.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's yeah. Well, why don't we move on to the next question? Because
please,
force boots. That's a new one. Yeah. So what's your favorite Star Wars sound effect?
Ooh. I've got two.
Okay.
I've got two. So one of them, to go with the one that you've probably heard before. It's the Millennium Falcon stalling.
Yeah.
That old prop plane sound.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly because it shows up, it's kind of like the Wilhelm scream. Like you hear that sound effect in other films and stuff like that, and you go, "It's the Falcon! It's the Falcon!" And that's all it is forever now. So I love hearing it stall. It makes me think of we're old enough to remember cars that had chokes on them.
Yep.
I remember learning to drive in a car that had a choke. And you start the engine and it would go, and then the engine was cold. Oh no! And it would go, oh, no, I can't stay on, and it would go, and it makes me think of that sort of stuff. And the second one is when the camera gets close enough to Kylo's lightsaber, his crossguard rippling. the sound of it rippling and sparking and whatnot, particularly in The Force Awakens, when him and Rey are having that close up, you need a teacher. That scene when it's real close. Yeah, the Han killer, the sound of the Han killer, that sound, I think it's just really good. Like it's so crisp. It's such a good sound.
That's great. Yeah, it's a lot of people say lightsaber, but it's great to think about a specific lightsaber, especially because clearly, I mean, Kylo Ren specifically, obviously, that's an extension of who he is and all those things. But yeah, I mean, that's a great sound, and it was distinguished itself from other lightsabers, which was great.
Yeah, more so than just the whoosh, as cool as that is, like it sitting idle, doing nothing.
Yeah,
just fuming away. That was cool. Very
awesome.
Cool.
Who's your favorite droid?
That has changed over the years. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't like him, but as an adult, I've come to appreciate him completely. It's 3PO. Like, R2 is R2,
right?
And like they're a very close one and two. And I wish that we had more R2 in the sequel trilogy. I really do. It's unfortunate, but that comical side of 3PO with like, just his terrible dad jokey kind of one-liners and that old style kind of quippy comedy, that you don't see a lot. It's corny. Like it's really corny. Like, and I feel like that quality of joke is in all of Star Wars, like in different ways, but he just really hammers it home like so well. And I mean, Anthony Daniels is, God, I mean, like, you can say what you will about Anthony Daniels when you put him on a stage and he just like likes to take over and whatnot.
Right.
But it's like, I love that about him.
Yeah.
Like he and 3PO are one and the same to me. Like they are the same person.
Yes. Yeah. And his biography is fantastic. And
I haven't read it.
Me too. The only way to read it, in my opinion, is to get the audiobook like I did. So that way you're getting it from him.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to interview him once for Star Wars Galaxy magazine. And speaking to him, the funny thing is every now and then you're talking to him and he just fell. And this was, 20 years ago. So it was before 20, 30 years ago. It was before it really, there's this next level of legend of what Star Wars is, and just he's speaking his normal regular voice, and then you realize you're speaking to C-3PO because he is C-3PO. He absolutely 100% is C-3PO. So cool. What is your favorite Star Wars collectible that you own?
Said it earlier, it's Shuttle Tidarium. Tidarium. From Return of the Jedi's toy series that ran well into the future, after the film. God, remember that? It's like, hey, this movie came out in 1983. Let's make toys for it, like in 1987 still. It's current.
Yeah.
So that ship is absolutely my favorite.
So does that may play into the next question, which is if you could own any spaceship or vehicle from Star Wars, would it be the Shuttle Tidarium or another vehicle?
Actually, no. It wouldn't.
Okay.
It wouldn't be. Now, is this the question that you normally say it can't be the Falcon?
I do normally say it can't be the Falcon. Yes. Yeah. Because
I'm gonna apply that rule because I think it's a bit too easy.
Yeah.
It's like, the Falcon. Yeah. Okay. So I think it would probably be. Yeah, so prequel era, the Jedi Starfighters.
Oh, very cool.
The lone Jedi Starfighters that are basically earlier TIE fighters, aren't they? Like, there's something about that kind of like, kind of makes me think of like rally cars.
Yep.
Like small, maneuverable, all that sort of stuff. Fast, like quick takeoffs, all that sort of stuff. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny too because I remember seeing those when they first, started hitting magazines before the movies came out, and being like, I don't know how I feel about this. And now I'm with you. Like those do not get enough love. And watching Clone Wars again with my son, we've been going back and watching Clone Wars again. To see those come in the two different versions of them, it's just it's great. And to your point, and I hadn't thought of it this way before, but yeah, it's totally George Lucas doing his hot rods and his drag racers, and there it is. It's absolutely 100% that. That's great. What's your favorite Star Wars moment?
It's the scene that I mentioned earlier. It goes back and forth between a few things. Actually, I'm gonna say two scenes.
Sure.
So up until the Rise of Skywalker happened, it was without a doubt, I could easily say Rey and Kylo in the snow, the let me show you the ways of the Force, going into the binary sunset, Force theme and the close-ups and all that stuff. That scene is magical, like absolutely magical. Brings me to tears every time. That is probably an equal tie now with the Luke Leia Jedi training flashback in Tross. Easily now that scene for me is like whoa, up there. Just such kind of like validation and payoff finally for Leia. It's always been building to it, obviously, and we all wish that Carrie Fisher was alive to have been able to do it. To have those scenes, and play them live and all that for real. But yeah, getting Billy Lord to do it, and just the helmet reveal. I didn't care about the CGI or anything like that. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
That scene, I love it.
I love that that's a scene that you can go to and not get hung up on the CGI. And I think this is one of those things where we talked before about the social media world that we live in and have conversations, and you can literally pick apart absolutely if you want
anything.
If you watched Return of the Jedi with that mindset, which is a great movie. I mean, it's a great Star Wars movie. It's a top 5 Star Wars movie. There's 11. I have a top 11 Star Wars movies. But if you watch Return of the Jedi with that nitpicky perspective that people brought to Rise of Skywalker, you couldn't watch it. You literally could not watch a frame of that movie. So, and I think Star Wars almost benefits sometimes from the campiness. I kind of like when you can see through the special effects in a way. I don't, that's a bit of an overstatement, but the reality is, I don't mind that. I know what they were trying to do with that. I loved Tarkin in Rogue One.
Same.
I knew what it was. I knew it was CGI and refacing.
And that's I think the real test. Like, forget us, forget the ones that are going to be nitpicky. Just give it to people that are going to watch the movie and not try to pick it apart.
Yeah.
And get their take on it, because obviously not that many people, but like 4 people that I know that have seen it that aren't diehards, that don't know who Peter Cushing is.
Right.
Even my mum knows who Peter Cushing is.
Right.
She's old enough to. She's seen him in movie films. She didn't know.
Right.
Like, it didn't clock to her. I asked her, I was like, do you know who that is? And she goes, oh yeah, that's that actor, what's his name? Peter something. And I was like, yeah. And then she goes, isn't he dead? And I go, yes. And then you could just see the gears turning. She's going,
right.
But and I'm like, yeah, computer. And she's like, and then you could see the gears turning again. She's like, they can do that now. And I'm like, yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I've had other friends that aren't so diehard. They watched it and they didn't notice it. They didn't get it. They just watched the movie.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and that's it's funny, and that's an interesting thing. And sometimes I question it because it's Star Wars. Good movies, you can go sort of shut off. And I think this is the thing with Marvel movies. I have said this before on the show as well. Is I don't think I've seen more than a handful of Marvel movies in the theater more than once. I go,
Yep.
I shut my brain off. I have a ton of fun. I love the action. It's loud. It's fun. And then I go home and it was like, that was great. And I can't do that with Star Wars. And I think sometimes I wonder to myself, like, how would I approach like Bad Batch if I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, but I did an interview with my dad, my 70-something-year-old dad, after Ahsoka showed up on Mandalorian. Because I wanted to know from somebody who is, like your mom, loves watching the movies and that's it, right? That's it. Okay, that was a fun afternoon. He didn't need to know who she was. He got enough out of the story, and that's where there needs to be big kudos to the story group, to Dave Filoni and everybody who's involved, in that they're bringing these characters that you and I could totally nerd out about and be like, well, the marking on her left cheek was a little lower than it was in the cartoon, and right. We can go in on that, but the reality is 99% of the audience isn't there, and yet they're telling these stories and they're working for people, and honestly that's what matters. And I think that's one of the amazing things about Star Wars is you and I and the echo chamber that we play in at times, we can have those in-depth conversations like we're talking about life and death and the important things happening in the world, but at the same time there's still fun movies and still fun stories.
I will say before you go to the next question, as we've been talking about this, I've started realizing, like, even though I grew up on the original trilogy, I think all of my like top moments in Star Wars are sequel trilogy at the moment, like with maybe one or two older ones sort of scattered in there, but like, geez, it's pretty much all sequel trilogy at the moment. Unexpected.
And it's funny. No, I mean, but what's interesting about that too is that there is so much, there's so many different doors, and this is something that I love about Star Wars in 2021 is that even though you grew up with seeing the VHSs and going to see the prequels in the theater and now having the sequels, that's the doorway that you currently have entered this house at. My son is a Clone Wars guy. Like he and I have Bad Batch, and he loves watch, and that's an amazing way to enter the story. And to me, honestly, I still go back to original trilogy, but I have to say that prequels have kind of moved up in my memory because now they're far enough back, and there's so many moments from the prequels that I absolutely love. And it's not to say that I don't love the sequels, because I love Last Jedi, I love Force Awakens. I really am struggling with Rise of Skywalker still on a couple different things, but that's a conversation for another time. But ultimately, the sequels have been, and the two standalone films have been so much fun. They've been just great entries into the lore, and I think that that's important. So cool. Well, the last question is, what is your go-to Star Wars quote?
Oh God. That's a hard one. I've periodically I'll find myself doing variations on the Maul, the one line that Maul has really in the Phantom Menace is like, at last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi, at last we'll have our revenge, but that's like a couple of times in conversations, like, at last I'll reveal my butt to the whatever.
What kind of conversations are you having, man?
Oh, Pete.
That's hilarious. It is funny, like how that's why I would go with go-to quote, because when I was saying favorite quote, like I think people feel like you need to be I need to be very stoic and thinking about what but the reality is, as a Star Wars fan, you have that one thing that you go to. You have that bizarre line that is just, that's your line, and you drive your friends crazy with it, and it comes up at the strangest times, and it's and that's great. That's one of the great things.
Yeah. It's true. Like, I mean, things like that just sort of stick out in your head. Like at the moment, I'm I'm saying everything in a Kiwi accent, like to do with Star Wars, even if it's not Bad Batch related. I'm just like, it's really just whatever I'm watching at that point in time, I'll tend to sort of like carry little lines from it forward and you know, start injecting it into things that I say and whatnot. But yeah, that that line from Maul, the line from Maul,
right? One of his,
it finds itself in some very odd situations.
It's funny you say that about the accent, because I probably do one of the worst Australian accents, but I do find that I drive my children crazy by walking around saying, you know, Ricka, Echo, Tick, Tick,
Echo, Tick, Tick. For fun, I thought I'd put that into the AI, and it gave me something funny. It said, so I wrote in, my favorite quote in all of Star Wars is, and it says that my favorite quote is, "Rebel scum, we hate you. You're nothing but a bunch of dark Siths."
There's a t-shirt right there. There's your next Blue Bantha t-shirt right there.
And there's an extension that said, in that moment, it resonated with me. I am a rebel scum. I am alone in the darkness, and I see in everyone is real very to me.
Okay, this is proof that AI is almost there. But not there just yet. So, Matt,
not quite.
This was a blast. Before I let you go, I need to get you to say this is Matt from Blue Bantha Milk, and you're listening to Around the Galaxy.
Okay. This is Matt from Blue Bantha. This is Matt from Blue Bantha Milk Co, and you are listening to Around the Galaxy.
That was perfect. Matt, tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
Go to YouTube. That's it, really. Like, go to YouTube, search in Blue Bantha Milk Co. Don't forget the Co. Otherwise, you just get recipes for blue milk drinks. It's ridiculous. So search that, and you will find us, and then hit the subscribe button. And from there, if you want to hear me talk about butts, go on Twitter. That's at Blue Bantha Milk. Sometimes I talk about Star Wars as well. I do most of the tweeting there. Sean every now and then will throw a tweet into Buffer. So we use Buffer to queue up tweets and whatnot, because both of us can't really spend a lot of time on social media during the day when all of you Americans are awake. So yeah, you'll get the odd one from Sean there. Facebook, search out Blue Bantha Milk Co. And yeah, if you want to join in on our Facebook group, we've got a cool little group activity going on at the moment where Sean is doing like a battle royale of favorite characters.
Awesome.
We'll be doing something with the winners, which we'll reveal that at a later date. But I think we're up to round 5, and yeah, you'll find that just by searching for Blue Bantha Milk Co. And there's a group called Blue Bantha Milkers, and yeah, you can get us there.
And you have the Lando Calrissian Chronicles from AI coming soon.
Yeah, so that'll be our next release. Chris Ryans from Broaxium is reprising his role as Lando Calrissian. He has recorded 2 episodes that are written by AI. The premise is very simple. You're sitting down to watch Lando do a story time, basically, of reading an entry in his diary. But the thing is a bit of time has passed, and so he doesn't remember what he wrote. So Chris is actually reading this stuff for the first time as he performs it.
That's
so
awesome.
that's the deal, because like we're pre-recording this, and you know, you've been in the live streams with
Sure.
us. Half the fun is that it's live and people are reacting then and there. They're reading it and trying to deliver these lines with a straight face and can't. We're none of us are really trained actors, right? so you know, like, you know, the Boba Fett molesting butts and stuff like that, and, you know, all that. That's hard to say. So we wanted that to try and be as persistent in these pre-recordings as possible. So I gave them to Chris basically an hour before he was meant to read them.
Awesome.
Just enough time for him to put them on his iPad and get them up. And he gets to read the intro bit, which is just him addressing camera, because he has to memorize that and be like, well, welcome, greetings, you know, all that stuff. And then he reads his diary, and it's great. There are times where I'm in tears watching him try to read stuff.
I can't wait for that. That's going to be a blast. Well, Matt, thank you so much, man. This was a lot of fun. I hope to have you on again sometime.
Mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very, very much. And nice to meet everyone. Hey, patrons.
Thanks, Matt. We'll talk to you soon.
Catch ya.